What's up, everybody? Thomas Bennett here. Welcome to part number 2 of this video. And in this video, we're going to be diving into the loads, okay? The dynamic loads of this car. Now, the reason I want to cover the dynamic loads of this car is because aero profile and all that stuff like that does matter. It makes a big difference now. And before we really dive into that and getting into the shocks and the bars and stuff, you've got to understand this bump rubber, the packer, and how just a turn here in the right rear or half a turn in the left rear, like those types of things have an effect on the car. Especially when you couple that with the bump rubber. All right, so I'm going to show you that in this video so you can see, just how big of an effect it can have on the car. All right, so stick around. What's up, everybody? Thomas Brandon here. Thank you very much, as always, for joining me. And like I said, this is part number 2 of this multi-part video series, training, whatever you want to call it, on the wing sprint cars. Now, if you haven't seen part 1, I would at least recommend watching that, just because in that video, we take the iRacing setup, make a couple of little tweaks to it, and make it handle better and also make it faster. And I cover kind of some baseline ideas in terms of the setups and adjustments with these cars. When it comes to the wing sprint cars, the main thing, and I said this in the previous video, and I'm going to keep saying it over and over and over again, keep it straight, keep it smooth, don't spin the tires. That's the thing. These are momentum cars, all right? Dirt racing is all about cornering speed. How fast can you get through the corner? And the faster you can do that, the quicker, the more consistent, the better off you will be. Now, a couple things to note real quick before we really dive into this. Number 1, I talked about this in the last video, but I want to reiterate this. Don't focus on your lap time in terms of just setting a fast lap, okay? That is a big mistake people make. They'll go out, they'll make an adjustment, they're watching their delta bar, they see that it's green, and they're like, that must be better. Don't do that. Look for consistency in your times and results, okay? If I go out and I run 8 laps and they're all 13.1, okay, that is going to be far better than me having a setup where, yeah, I might be able to hit a 13.0 or even a 12.9, but it's such a handful, it's so on the edge that I'm all over the place. And when you're out there racing, you want to have something that you are comfortable with, that you can put it where you want it to go, when you want it to go there. All right, if the car's just on edge, handful, right? I mean, if you're just looking for a fast lap, that's great for qualifying. But remember, we're talking about the whole package here, having a car that's going to work out there in race trim, because that's really, really important. That's what's going to separate you from those other drivers out there. All right, anybody can go out there, hold it wide open, and turn left, man. Anybody can do that. Okay, that's not hard. My 10-year-old son, I can throw on the sim right now. He can do that, okay? It's being able to do that when all the other cars are around you. And the number 1 key to that is being comfortable, all right? So let's head over. Let's dive in. Let's take a look at what some of these adjustments do and kind of the idea behind them and when you want to make them, which is really, really important. All right, so first thing we're going to do is I'm going to get what I'm calling our video base, and this was the base setup that we built in the first video. Just going to go out here. We're just going to turn a couple of laps here. All right, and then I'm going to make a couple of changes. And then show you what the difference is. One more lap here. Okay, so that's our base. All right, and the car feels pretty good. You can hear we are spinning the tires a little bit when we're hitting the rev limiter, but overall it's not bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make just a couple of changes to this. First of all, I'm going to actually take some packer out, and the reason I'm going to take some packer out is I'm going to increase the bump rubber rate. All right. Tacky tracks, I actually run a stiffer bump rubber. The bump rubber, all right, you have to have the mechanical leverage to run a stiff bump rubber. So a lot of times, and this is what I was doing in the beginning, was I would actually start softer and then go stiffer as the track got slicked off to give me more left rear load. The problem with that is though, is if the track gets really slick and you're really off throttle, the car will start pogoing on the left rear. And since I've discovered kind of this aero profile stuff that I've been trying, messing with, and it seems to be working for me, as the track slicks off, I actually want the car to wing over even easier. Okay, I want to be able to be on only half throttle and have the car wing over nice and easy, because then I'm not worried about having to stomp it and yank it or anything like that. I can just drive it in nice and easy and smooth and maintain that grip. Okay, so tacky track, I'm going to actually put more bump rubber in it. And since I'm stiffening up this left rear bump rubber, I'm going to take some packer out to allow it more room, even though the packers seem, or the bump rubber seem to be pretty much the same height within like a 1/4 inch, to allow it just a little bit more room. Okay, because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually add a half a turn to the right front, the right rear, and I'm going to take a half a turn out of the left rear. All right, so essentially what I'm doing is I'm just putting more of that tilt into the car. Okay, now what this does is this is going to get the car that winged over platform that I want, and it's going to do it a little bit more naturally. And this is also going to affect our loads, as you'll see here in just a bit. Okay, so let's go back out here and let's just turn a couple laps, and you're going to see that just a half a turn here, a half a turn there, it makes a big difference. Let's do that little slider move that we did. That one was a lot better. Okay. So, just a couple laps. I can tell you right now, that felt much better. The car definitely felt like it had more grip. The profile of it felt really nice. It's still not quite where I want it to be, but it's pretty good. Okay. Now, if we look at that here, and let's just load up the last 2 runs that we did, and we'll compare them here in terms of the data. This is really important. Okay. The ride heights on these cars really matter now. Bottoming out the car makes a difference. Remember, it used to be like we would just drop the rear end, right? We could crank up the front and drop the rear, because if you bottomed out, it didn't really matter. It didn't really do nothing to the car. If you bottom these things out now, if you go into a corner and the car all of a sudden just snaps around on you, chances are that left rear rail is hitting the ground. You're bottoming out. So controlling the ride height, especially when you're trying to get the car to wing over and the platform of it, is really, really important. What you'll notice is even though we took packer out of the left rear and took a half a turn out of the left rear, our ride height, and just so you guys can see, the white is the one that we made the adjustments. The colored lines is the base, okay? Our left rear was only 0.06 of an inch lower on average. So it's basically the same, right? We took a half an inch of packer out and lowered it a half a turn, but it was basically the same. It's only slightly lower. So that's why I made those adjustments, right? If you look at the rest of the ride heights on the car, on average, they're pretty close. The right front's a little bit higher, which is to be expected since the left rear was a little bit lower. We also put a half a turn in the right front. The right rear, a little bit higher because we put a half a turn in the right rear, okay? So those little tweaks made a difference. Now, when we look at our loads here, and keep in mind, before I start getting messages and stuff about this, even though I say it every time we talk about telemetry, I know this is not the actual loads the car is getting in the sim. I know that. Okay? It's these loads are not accurate to what's in the sim. I look for the difference. That's what I use. So those adjustments on the right rear, how does that affect my right rear load? How does raising that right rear up a little bit affect the load? That's what I'm looking for. Okay, I don't care what this number is in terms of like the amount of force, because I know that's not what it is in the sim. Okay, I'm just looking at to see how did that change affect it. On here, for example, obviously our left rear load is going to go up some because we increased that bump rubber. Our bump rubber load went up by about 140 pounds on average, okay? If you look at the left rear load overall, it went up almost 160, about a little less than 170 on average. We're talking about, keep in mind, we're talking about on average all the way around the track. If we look at it basically 1-to-1 here and we look at it like in turn 1, you can see that our left rear is loaded more than 100 pounds more than with the smaller bump rubber, to be expected. But now this was really, really important though. Okay, this is something to keep in mind. Look at our right rear load. Even though we added a half a turn to the right rear, our right rear load actually went down. So why is that? All right, why did the right rear load go down when we actually added turns to it? Remember, that's the thought process. When you add preload to that, and the weight should increase on the right rear. Well, because like I said, everything on these cars is connected now. If I take this, right? If I take this and we go to we go 500 on the bump rubber and then 750 on the packer. So decrease the bump rubber 500 pounds, increase the packer a half an inch. Okay. Now, watch how this affects the right rear. And we're just going to do one lap here around the top. One full lap here around the top. Okay, there we go. So now let's pull that up here in Motec. And now you can see a massive difference with it. By changing that bump rubber and packer, we've changed our load on the right rear a ton. And just so you can see which ones we've got here, this is the white line has got the 1,000-pound bump rubber. The colored lines has got the 500-pound bump rubber. And the colored lines has got the rear end dropped. The white line's got a half a turn out of the left rear, half a turn in the right rear. Okay? And when you look at this now, the difference is significant. Our left rear load has obviously gone down, but our right rear load has gone up. And compared to what it was before, yeah, so this is where the turns are even, the stops are the same, but we've just changed the bump rubber and packer. All right, so the colored line's got the 500-pound bump rubber with the 3/4 inch packer. The white line's 1,000-pound bump rubber, 1/4 inch packer. With the softer left rear bump rubber, we've got almost double the right rear load. And this is what you need to understand. This is really important. I did this to illustrate a point because a lot of people don't think like this. They have a hard time thinking like this when it comes to race cars and setups and adjustments. You don't just create load out of nowhere. This is what people need to understand, right? Just because you go turning the stop and it puts weight into the right rear, that load it's not just out of thin air, right? Like the setup gods don't just come down and go poof, more load. Like that's not the way it works. It's got to come from somewhere. Everything has to come from somewhere. This car can only generate so much force. Yes, we can increase the wing angle and generate more downforce with it, right? To a certain degree. Then at some point, it's just slowing us down. It's a balance. But in terms of the mechanical load, the leverage aspect of it, you can't just magically create more load. That's not the way that it works. It's got to come from somewhere. Okay? So if you want to load up the left rear, that load's got to come from somewhere. whether it's coming off the right rear or the right front or somewhere on the car. Now, typically it's going to go corner to corner, front to back, side to side, but with the wing sprint car, it's very different because of the wing and the fact that it's winging it over and sucking it down at the same time. So when you are making adjustments on this, you always need to think about that, right? How is this going to affect the rest of the car? That's why I say make these adjustments small. So when you get this to where the car is comfortable for you, all right, when you got it to where, hey, this bump rubber and packer feels good on this track while it's tacky, right? You really want to leave that and don't play around with it too much. If you're not overly familiar with this stuff, if you're newer to this stuff, don't mess with it too much because it can have a huge effect on your setup and you don't even change anything else. Just that one adjustment can have a huge effect on your setup. Okay? So don't mess with it if you're not comfortable messing with it. All right? I did this to show you that because I'll see people and they'll be like, oh, I went from a 500 to a 1500. It's like, man, that's a huge adjustment. A huge adjustment. Like doing that and not changing anything else, like you might get lucky and hit a home run. You might also make your car extremely undrivable. All right. And that's why I wanted to cover this first in this video because that bump rubber and packer are so important to this car now. It is so important and it affects so much on these cars. It affects everything. It affects everything. What you're running here can have an effect on your shock package, what bars you're running, the wing, the gear, everything. Everything. If you are fooling around with this and you go to the extremes and you don't do it right. It really can. Okay? So, like I said, if you're not overly comfortable with messing around with this, figure out what feels good, set it, and forget it. Like I said, when the track slicks off and you want the car to wing over easier, if you want to do like what I do, you can soften up this bump rubber a little bit, make it a little bit easier to wing over so the car's not pogo sticking off the left rear. But other than that, unless you are comfortable with doing this, don't mess with that too much, okay? Because you can get that feeling good at the track and then play with everything else, all right? Which is what we are going to do in the next video. All right, you guys, so I know that was a lot, but and really like in depth and granular, but I wanted to show you that in terms of the, because really wanted to show you that in terms of the adjustments and setups and stuff like that, because like I said before, these cars are I don't like to say temperamental because that makes it sound like, you know, one wrong adjustment and all of a sudden the thing's junk. That's not the case, but small adjustments, couple clicks here or there, can have a big effect on it. And, you know, like I said, I've heard people and, you know, seen people who are just, they change those bump rubbers like we used to change the gears where the track got slicker and it was just like boom, 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 right? We used to just step down on the gear to help with wheel spin. And those things have such an effect on the car now. You can have a car that feels great and then you go to the feature and you mess with that and do one or two other things and now you got a car that's undrivable. Okay, so I wanted to really cover those loads with you because it's super important. It's super important. And before we dive into the getting really, we're talking about the aero profile and stuff like that, you know, where I deep dive into it, then we had to cover those loads. All right, we had to cover those loads. So that's gonna do it for this video. We're gonna have one more. Actually, there'll be two more after this. We got one more where we're going to be diving into the shocks and the bars, covering the aero platform and that as well. And then after that, I'll kind of show you some adjustments to make for the slick track, okay? So because you can, once you get the car feeling good at a track, you can do a whole lot with just wheel spacing, stagger, you know, wing angle, wing position, and be very, very good on a slick track. You don't have to change a whole lot. You really don't. So we'll get into that in the next video. So that'll do it. If you like this, you know what to do. Hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe as well. We have a big portion of you who watch these videos that aren't subscribed. So it's, you know, I don't like asking people to do it. I usually make a joke of it. You know, hey, you know what to do. Every other YouTuber asks you to do. But want to get to 20K this year. That's the goal. It's January 2024. I want to be at 20K by the end of this year. I'm really trying to make sure I get the content out like I was doing before consistently, pre 2023, pre the glass business. So if you could hit the subscribe button, it does really help us with everything. And, hit that like button because that helps too with all this stuff. I mean, YouTube keeps track of all that stuff. So if you can do that, that'd help us out. And I'd really appreciate it. So thank you very much as always. Until next time, I want to wish you good luck, good racing,